Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Let There Be Talk. Today is Monday, the 23rd of January, and this episode is brought to you by my fantastic sponsor, Migos Dogs. That's right, you got a dog, you need to feed that dog the cleanest food on the planet. Migos Dog, made right in Malibu, California. And if you live in the Los Angeles area, they are now delivering to your house. Get 35% off fresh dog food for your first time order with an auto subscription. Just use the code FIRSTSUB, FIRSTSUB, to save 35% on this tasty dog food. Enjoy 10% off your first one-time purchase with the promo code FIRST10. Go to migosdog.com. Don't be feeding your dog dumb stuff, man. You want that dog to be around a long time. They got salmon. They've got, they got beef coming out. Gertie tried the beef, really liked it. Migos Dog. Follow them on Instagram. Pick up some salmon or duck, chicken. They've also got toppers to put on some food you might have now. migosdog.com. Okay, great guest today, you know. I have had pretty much all the drummers on, it seems like. I mean, I take pride in featuring drummers. This is not a drummer podcast, but I believe they need massive spotlight because they are the kings of rock and roll or soul or R&B, whatever they're playing. If they're the killers, I want them on the show. My guest today is Mike Portnoy. And, man, this guy is legendary status. Played 25 years with the Course Dream Theater. And since he left Dream Theater, he has played with so many great groups. He's got a new record out with the Winery Dogs with my old friend Richie Kotzen and Billy Sheehan. It's a brand new record coming out February 3rd called 3, the number 3. This is their third album, obviously. And it has some fantastic songs on it. The playing on it is mind-boggling. Richie is just destroying, and Mike is just killing it with just fierce groove. You might check out some of his other projects, obviously, that he's done over the years. Sons of Apollo, Flying Colors. He did some time with Avenged Sevenfold, recorded a record with them. He also sits behind the kit now, here and there, with Twisted Sister. They're going to be playing this Friday in Los Angeles at the Heavy Metal Hall of Fame, I believe it is. It was great to sit down with him and get into the mix again since all the stuff that's been happening over the last 5 weeks with my mom. Rest in peace, Mom. I love you. I hope everybody has a great week. I will be in New York City this week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Wednesday through Friday, I will be at the Stand, and the Saturday I'm with Joey Diaz at Sony Hall. That show is sold out. I'll also be in San Francisco at the Punchline, February 22 through 25, headlining 4 nights. San Francisco, get those tickets immediately and spread the word. Thank you, everybody, for your support and your kind words. I love all of you, and it means the world to me that you tune into this podcast. Patreoners, I want to give you some big love. Patreon.com/Dean Del Rey. Solid people out there on my Patreon, and I cannot thank you enough. Patreon.com/Dean Del Rey. Thank you, guys. Let's get into it right now. Great episode. Really cool guy. Mike Portnoy. The candles are lit. I've been doing the podcast 11 years, and I probably have had all of the greatest drummers on, other than, like, say, Charlie Watts, but I've had pretty much everybody on except you, which is wild.
Wow. Well, thanks. Better late than never, right?
Yeah, you know, it's funny. The last time I saw you, since Twisted Sister is going to play this weekend, I brought you guys on stage, which I think is the last gig. Everybody says it's something else, but it was at the Roxy for the Cat House anniversary.
That wasn't the last gig. I mean, that was the last West Coast gig, but yeah, I totally remember that.
Yeah, it was wild, man. I was standing on stage and I had seen Twisted Sister many times in the old days, but to be like 5 feet away from like Dee Snider, it was wild to see uh how insane the impact of that guy just up there. It was like, wow.
All of them. I mean, they're all larger than life. They were kind of like, I used to go see them back in the club days, back in the early 80s before they blew up on MTV. And they were larger than life. It was like seeing Kiss, in a small club back then. They were all larger than life and huge. Dee is a huge guy and Mark Mendoza is a big guy. So yeah, and they all wore the biker jackets with the colors and everything like that. So yeah, they always had a very larger than life kind of aura about them. But yeah, that was it's a shame that like that we only played I think 4 or 5 songs at that show, and we're going to be playing this week in California as well, and it's only 3 songs. So it's a shame that in my time with them, both times we played California or the Southern California area, it was only like quick appearances, not a proper gig.
It's got to be such a different animal. Because I was thinking about over the years, of course, Dream Theater for 25 years, or to play rock, because that's like rock. Avenged Sevenfold, and this Winery Dogs record is rock, and it's such a different animal. Do you get bored if you're just playing straight rock?
No. I mean, I made my name in Dream Theater for 25 years playing this incredibly complex progressive music, but that's just one side of me. I mean, I think that's why after I left Dream Theater, I was so determined to do so many different things across the board, everything from like the classic rock 60s and 70s sound of the Winery Dogs to thrash metal stuff with Metal Allegiance, and then stuff with Twisted Sister or Avenged. I mean, I was always a huge music fan of everything. When I went off to Berkeley and we formed Dream Theater, I just met 2 other guys that were into the more progressive technical stuff like Rush with a little bit of a heavier edge. But I also at that point could have just as easily formed a band that was like The Who or Zeppelin or Cream, or I could have just as easily formed a thrash metal band in the vein of like Slayer and Anthrax and Exodus. My musical taste always has been very, very, very broad. So everything I've done outside of Dream Theater are kind of just extensions of all of these different sides of me. So I'm just as home playing with Twisted Sister as I ever was playing 20-minute songs with Dream Theater. They're just 2 different sides of what I love to do. And, not only what I love to do as a drummer, but what I love to listen to as a music listener.
Yeah. Yeah, same here. I listen to everything, always have, from Prince to Carole King to Slayer to, country, outlaw country. So yeah, I get it,
That's where you lose me. Not a country fan, but
I don't go deep on country. But I do appreciate some serious killer songwriting, say in, Willie Nelson, even some newer country now of, say, Jamie Johnson, and these guys that are, Sturgill, and these guys that are like, they're basically kind of rock with these like heavy songs,
Yeah, no, look, variety is the spice of music, man. That's I love to listen to as much as I can, and love to play as much as I can. That's why I play in 48 different bands at the same time.
I was going to ask you this because, if I look at the history of drummers, you almost have to play in 48 bands now to even make any money. But I always thought that because I played music for years, the downfall, if the drummer didn't have anything to do with the songwriting, they were just screwed,
Well, I guess I honestly never looked at, I didn't get in this business to make money, and to me, it was always just wanted to play music and be creative. And everything I've been a part of, I've always been an equal songwriter, other than these hired gun gigs like Twisted Sister and Avenged, obviously. But any of the bands I'm a part of and have made records with, I'm an equal part of the writing. And, in a lot of the bands, I produce the albums as well. So, yeah, I guess maybe for some drummers, if you're not part of the writing, I guess that would be an issue. But for me, it's never really been an issue because I've always been a part of the creative process with everything I do.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's, that's the way you got to do it. Stay in the room and let the magic happen. I'm not saying, you got to make money, but I'm saying years down the road, you see guys that were drummers and they're like, so yeah.
Well, tell that to Lars Ulrich, right? Or Dave Grohl.
What was wild? I didn't know, but you lived in Carmel for a while. I grew up in the Bay Area. That had to be kind of weird out there in Carmel.
I didn't live there, but my father did. My parents got separated when I was really, really young, and he relocated to Carmel, and I would spend the summers with him. And in fact, that's where the band got the name Dream Theater, because there was a movie theater in Monterey, which is right next door to Carmel. And I used to go see all the midnight movies there. I'd see the Rocky Horror Picture Show and Rock and Roll High School, and The Kids Are All Right, and The Song Remains the Same. And I used to go see all those midnight movies at the Dream Theater in Monterey. And when we put the band together, we were looking for a name. My dad suggested Dream Theater as a name, and that's where it came from.
He was a radio DJ. That's pretty cool, like playing classic rock radio.
Yeah, I used to DJ with him. I'd do the morning show. I was a little 6-year-old kid. He'd let me pick the records, and I'd be playing like Cheech Chong records and stuff on the air. But he would let me pick stuff and spin it. And my first claim to fame was, I was around 6 or 7 years old, placing a phone call, and the operator recognized my voice and was like, "Are you Mike Portnoy?" And that was my first taste of fame.
I'm a comedian, and it's funny you said Cheech and Chong, because we're the same age, and that, there's such a big deal to me back in the day, going to a party like you put on Ted Nugent, and then you would put on Richard Pryor record or Cheech and Chong. They were the same kind of thing. It was rock and roll.
I grew up on those early Cheech and Chong albums, the first 3 or 4 of them. And I knew every one of those skits by heart. I mean, people don't realize now, when we were kids in the 60s and 70s, obviously there was no internet, but even, there were no DVDs, there was no videotapes even. We had VCRs, but that was just to record stuff. So honestly, if you wanted to hear comedy or whatever, you'd have to buy the records. And it was Cheech and Chong and Richard Pryor and, all those early comedy records. I remember the early Steve Martin albums. That's how we got our comedy back then.
Yeah. And it was so wild too, right? Because you're young, you're like my age back then. So you're usually sneaking it from the parents' record collection, and you're putting it on, and you're hearing about drugs and the word fuck and stuff. You're just like, whoa, it just seems so outlaw.
No, that's how, I learned about sex, drugs, and rock and roll from, those Cheech and Chong albums, or going to see these movies, going to see Woodstock in the movie theater, watching people smoke pot. And, that's how you learned about stuff like that when you were our age and you were kids.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Are you a comedy fan now? Do you watch comedy on the bus when you're cruising around?
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
I'm a comedian. That's why I was asking, because it's, I know a lot of musicians always wanted to be comedians, and comedians want to be musicians,
Right. Now, like Bill Burr, for instance. I like the comedians that also have at least a knowledge of music, and it's, kind of crossed over, like Don Jameson does that as well. And, people that are you'd be surprised how many comedians are musicians, or at least are music fans. Yeah. And every once in a while, when I'll see that, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, Bill's like my best friend. We tour together. So,
Really?
once a year we do this AC/DC. I do this Bon Scott tribute,
That's great.
We have all kinds of big guys come down and play, but Bill plays drums on a few, and I can just tell he absolutely loves it, because he's up there playing, and there's like Nikki Sixx and Lur from Primus, and Scott Ian. Yeah. So he's just like, oh my God,
Yeah, absolutely. And Brian Poussaint's another one, and Tim Heidecker. Tim's not like a metalhead, but he's got a big, deep appreciation for the Beatles and stuff. That he and I connected over the Beatles just because we were both Beatle fanatics. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of crossover between comedy and music.
I wasn't a Beatles guy. I listened to the Beatles and I liked the Beatles, but I never go like, oh yeah, the Beatles. And then after that documentary, man, it's just over with now. I'm just obsessed.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah, it really was. And what a great time to, later in life, you find these bands that you love, like all of a sudden you love, like later I found Bruce, or later, or growing up, I wasn't into Pink Floyd. It was like stoner rock. And now Pink Floyd's like my favorite. But any bands that you didn't like growing up that you're into now?
I grew up listening to so much shit, and I loved everything from childhood. I mean, I grew up with the Beatles and the Who and Zeppelin and the Stones and Bowie. I mean, that's what I grew up with. I can't say there's much that I've recently discovered from then, because I was listening to it all then. I listened to Hendrix and Cream and The Doors and Zappa and Pink Floyd. I don't know. I was listening to stuff literally from day one because as we already talked about, my dad was a disc jockey. So I grew up surrounded by this stuff. So I was kind of hip to it from very early on.
Yeah. I mean, I was hip to it too, but it'd be like Chicago. I'd be like, no way.
I love Chicago.
Yeah, now I love them now.
I mean, I was listening to stuff that I probably should be embarrassed to admit, but I was listening to like the early Bee Gees when they were still doing pop rock stuff, and
love it.
Chicago and the Monkees and the Osmonds. A lot of stuff that I should be embarrassed to admit I listened to. I don't know. I had no shame. I was pretty open-minded all along with everything I listened to.
I was so into the disco, and I would just shout it out, I mean, and also like Earth, Wind and Fire and Ohio Players and all of that. I was way into that.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's the key to the key to music is an open mind, man.
Let's talk a little bit about the new record coming out February 3rd. I know Richie Kotzen quite well. Richie has played one of my Bon Scott shows, and we both have the same birthday. That's when the record's coming out, February 3rd.
That's right.
Yeah. And I've known him for like 35 years. I've had Billy on. But the interesting thing about this Winery Dogs record, it's called 3, and it comes out on the 3rd, like I just said. If I sat there and thought about it for a little while, this kind of feels like a record that would be in between Eat 'Em and Smile and Skyscraper, minus the vocals. The music feel of it really has this incredible kind of that era of Diamond Dave.
Well, I mean, inevitably, Billy, puts his stamp on everything he's a part of. And I remember when Billy got the David Lee Roth gig, I was already a fan of his from Tallis. I was going to see Tallis in the clubs on Long Island and Brooklyn and stuff like that. So I was already a fan of his, and I was already a fan of Steve Vai as well. So when Steve and Billy hooked up in Dave's band back in 85 or 6 or whatever it was, I mean, to me, that was like the dream team. And, they did their version of Shy Boy, which was originally a Tallis song. So, yeah, inevitably, what we do in the Winery Dogs is going to have touches of that, especially because Billy and Richie do a lot of unison lines and stuff like that. And that was kind of the trademark of those David Lee Roth albums. But I would say, look, we all love Diamond Dave and Van Halen. I mean, I'm a huge Van Halen fan, but I think what the Winery Dogs do is a little more predated in the classic rock sound of like the 60s and 70s. I think more like Zeppelin, Cream, Hendrix, Grand Funk, Vanilla Fudge. I think that's more in the vein of what the Winery Dogs do. And of course, Richie brings that whole soulful, like funky R&B angle as well. So yeah, it's a big melting pot of all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not saying it's exactly. I'm just saying it would have been the cool record after Eat 'Em and Smile, because Skyscraper went a little too far with the keyboards and everything, but it's definitely got a fantastic flavor. I liked some of the weirder stuff on the record, like Stars. I think that is a fantastic song, and that outro jam is amazing.
Yeah, thank you, man. Well, we have a couple songs in the album that the last song in the album, Red Wine, and there's another song called Pharaoh, where both of those tracks, the second half of the tune, we're just jamming. I mean, that's what we do a lot live. We just jam. It's old school. When you see Zeppelin back in the day, they would just go off on these tangents and jam. And that's a lot of fun with what we do with the Winery Dogs live. So there was these 2 tracks on the new album where we wanted to just do that in the studio and see where it went. So what you're hearing on those jams, that's just like no discussion. It just happened, and it's left on the album.
Pharaoh is amazing, and Mad World. Those are some great songs, man. When you get into the middle of the record, it really just kind of goes somewhere else. And I was just like, wow, because I love Zeppelin, 77 era where they're really bloated and way out there, no quarter 30 minutes and stuff. And it's just like, oh my God, that stuff to me is just fantastic. And that's what I like about the middle of this record. It really is just kind of not your standard rock. It doesn't have the formula verse, bridge, chorus, verse, it really goes for a ride. And Richie is playing his ass off on this. And I got to tell you, man, the groove and the pocket on this plane, it is fantastic. I can feel it so fiercely. I was like, man, this pocket is amazing.
Awesome. Well, thank you, man. Well, I mean, I get to wear that hat with the Winery Dogs. I kind of made my name 25 years in Dream Theater, just doing this crazy progressive technical shit that isn't necessarily everybody's cup of tea. Either you love it or you hate it. There's not much middle ground. But what I get to do in the Winery Dogs, it's like people really get this, man. It doesn't matter if you're a fan of mine, if you like prog or metal, or if you like classic rock. It seems like Winery Dogs has a little something for everyone that they could gravitate to. And the pocket is so important. And me and Billy get to just really lay it down in this band. And it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, the tones are amazing on the record too. Was it done online, or did you guys go into a studio?
I wouldn't even call it as a studio. It was Richie's. He's got a little jam room in his house that's the size of like a bedroom, and it's really close quarters and tight. And just turn up the amps and jam like old school, like when you're in a junior high school band, like playing in your garage. And that's the way it's got to be. We've never worked in the Winery Dogs like trading stuff online and emails. And no, we got to be in the room together, bouncing ideas off of each other, just feeling what's going on in the room for sure.
That's fantastic. And then how long did it take to record?
Well, the writing of the basic music and the arrangements, that was over the course of 2 sessions, about a week each. So, the blueprints and getting my drum tracks done, because I would track my drum as soon as we would finish arranging a song, the music, I would track my drums right there and then while it was fresh in my head. So that process was only a couple of weeks, but then there's the process of tracking the guitar and bass, and then Richie writing all the vocal melodies and the lyrics. So that process obviously takes many, many months for Richie to, do his work on. But, the overall process was about a year, over the course of a year, because we took our time with it because we knew we couldn't tour until 2023. So we had time to let it all simmer and develop.
Where do you live? The East Coast?
I'm in Pennsylvania. I mean, I grew up in New York, Long Island for 30 something years, but I've been here in Pennsylvania for about 20 years now.
Back then, where were you going to see your shows? Like, were you going to the Garden? Did you ever get to see Zeppelin? I missed them. I'm like 1 year too young.
Yeah, I never saw Zeppelin, but I did see most of the classic bands back then. I saw Kiss at the Garden in 77. I saw Paul McCartney and Wings at the Nassau Coliseum in 76. I'd go to, most of the arena shows growing up on Long Island were at Nassau Coliseum or Madison Square Garden. I'd seen everybody at the Garden through the years. And, there was a lot of clubs back then, too, growing up on Long Island in the 70s and 80s. The club scene was still big, and I'd go see Twisted Sister and Zebra and, Talus, like I mentioned earlier. So, yeah, there was a great scene back then on Long Island in New York.
Yeah. I remember the first time I played New York in the 90s, I guess it was. A lot of the bands in New York would just play covers. It was kind of wild. I was like, wow, these guys are all cover bands. Even Twisted played a lot of covers,
Yeah, I mean, that's what they all used to do. Twisted would play like 3 or 4 sets a night. They'd do like 2 sets of covers and then get around to their originals later. But yeah, I mean, that's what most bands had to do on the Long Island, New York club scene back then.
Yeah, I mean, that's how you had to make money. Zebra was doing Zeppelin, and then they would do their own set, That band's fantastic. Even now, I saw them a few years ago, right before COVID again at the Whiskey, and they were just killing it.
Yeah, I love the first Zebra album's a classic.
What was your first drum kit? Was it a good one or just a piece of junk?
A piece of shit. Sparkle Blue Royce. I don't even know, just some low budget name brand. But I got my first kit when I was 11, and I was around 78, and I was a huge Kiss fan at the time. And my grandfather bought me for my 11th birthday bought me a little 3-piece drum kit, and that's what I started on. And then a few years later, I started saving up money, working jobs, saving up money, and then I bought my first Mammoth Neil Peart kind of drum kit.
Yeah. Yeah, man. It's just the drums are such a bummer because it's a million pieces. Then you got to get a vehicle to move them around. Would your mom drive you to gigs and stuff with it, or did you have a car?
Well, my first gigs with my first band, we were just a local, we were teenagers, we were junior high school, whatever. And we'd have older friends with cars that would drive us around, but we would just be playing like the local church and stuff like that, just playing covers. We were doing like all, Ozzy and Sabbath and Van Halen and, early first Motley Crue album, a lot. That was kind of what we started with back in my first band.
I had Gene on the show, and it was just insane to have him on because you're like me, the same age. Kiss was beyond anything. They just you can't
They're
even
superheroes.
Yeah, you can't even believe what you're seeing. I saw them. I didn't see them at 77. They played in San Francisco in 77 the night Elvis Presley died, which is wild.
Yeah.
But I saw him on 79 on the Dynasty tour. Yeah. And it was insane, right? They just come out of those boxes,
I saw the Dynasty tour at the Nassau Coliseum and Judas Priest was opening. Judas Priest was out for Unleashed in the East and Kiss with Dynasty. Yeah. I mean, they were superheroes, man. They were like, like a superhero version of the Beatles. The Beatles were the first band where you had 4 strong personalities, and Kiss took that model and took it to the next level.
Do you ever meet Peter?
Yeah, of course. In fact, I played with Peter and Ace. The first time Peter and Ace played together in like 11 or 12 years, it was about almost 10 years ago. Eddie Trunk was doing a 30th anniversary party, or a concert at the Hard Rock in New York, and the Winery Dogs played at this party. Winery Dogs did a set, and then we did another set afterwards where me and Billy Sheehan were kind of the house band for all these special guests to celebrate Eddie's party. And we had everybody, Lita Ford and JJ French and Jeff Tate and who else? I mean, the list goes on and on and on. All the Anthrax guys were there, the Overkill guys. But anyway, we had Peter and Ace out for a bunch of songs, and Peter played my kit, and then I played on a small kit next to him, and I got to play with Peter and Ace for the first time. They had reconnected and played together in like 12 years. So yeah, that was a huge honor.
Wow. What songs did you guys play? Like Shock Me and stuff like that?
We did the band for that. It was me, Scott Ian and Frankie Bello from Anthrax, Bumblefoot, and then we had Ace and Peter out. And first we did Got to Choose before they came out, but then Ace came out and we did Parasite, and Peter came out and we did Hooligan and Rock and Roll All Night. Maybe one more. I can't remember offhand, but yeah, that was as a Kiss fan from childhood, that was amazing. That was one of the career highlights for me.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's got to be crazy. Absolutely. You're just looking over and there's Peter, Chris,
Yeah.
Did you have all the posters in your room? I had them all,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Not only all 4 walls, but the ceiling as well.
I know your dad was a DJ and he was way into music, but was your mom cool also? Like, cause I lost my mom a few weeks ago and it's been absolute. Yeah, it's been brutal. This is the first podcast I've done since, with a guest. And but I just think about having a cool mom. The cool mom should be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah, my mom was the coolest.
Yeah, right. The one that brings you to gigs. And
I'll put it this way: when I saw Kiss, we talked about Kiss in '77, and I still got the button right here.
Yeah.
She took me, and she was smoking a joint with the guy sitting next to us.
Oh man.
Yeah, that was like my first time being in an arena just filled with pot smoke, and my mom was hitting the joint with the guy right next to us. So yeah, she was the coolest. She passed. I lost my mom when I was 17. She passed away in a plane crash when I was 17. So yeah, but she was the coolest. She was so supportive.
Yeah, man. Sorry, dude. That had to be brutal when you're young.
It was. Yeah. You got a life lesson that hard pretty early on. It toughened me up.
Yeah. Damn. Yeah, my mom took me to Kiss. She went and she also took me to see this. You're gonna like this, Bill. It was a day on the green in Oakland, and the opening band Cheap Trick. Then it was AC/DC on the Powerade
Wow.
tour, and then the next band was Journey, Infinity Record, and then Blue Oyster
Wow.
Cult, Nugent. That was the another show she took me to. And
Wow. That's
that was
amazing.
that was the game changer for me from that day on. And I still listen to all those bands right now.
Yeah, those were the days, man. You know, those are concerts back then, man, were just so fucking special.
Oh God, yeah. Now you're 55, been playing drums all your life. I always have a drummer, people hit me up and go, ask the drummer if they have any pain or, stuff like that and how they take care of it. What's their regimen to get themselves together and fix themselves, like arthritis or shoulders or anything.
Yeah, I'm the worst, man. I mean, I'm so out of shape, and I mean, I could play a 3-hour show, no problem, because it's just muscle memory for me. It's just those are the muscles that I've been using for 45 years or whatever. So I could play a 3-hour show, no problem. But if I had to like freaking jog down the block, I would die. I can't do it. So I don't know, man. My body is starting to feel it at this age. My back is always hurting. What do I do? I don't know. I try to take care of myself the best I can, but it's hard on the road when you travel as much as I do, and I don't have the answers. A lot of Advil. Yeah,
How about yoga though, man? Stuff like that, stretching and everything.
I'm so bad, dude. I can't even touch my toes.
Oh man, you got to get it together, dude, because you play the drums.
I know, man. I mean, to be honest, I had issues when I was in my 30s. I was having bad tendonitis in my elbow, so I had to start wearing a brace on stage when I was trying to recover from that. And at that point, I started going for massages regularly, legit massages. I would have to go, and I have a real masseuse that would come to the gigs each day, and I'd have to get a massage before going on stage each day. And that helped me a lot, actually, getting massaged regularly and maybe going to the chiropractor as much as I can as well. So that helps.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's got to be brutal. I mean, drumming and also singers. Like I was a singer, and when you're young, you're just hitting all these high notes in the studio because it's easy. And then you get older and you're like, oh shit. I mean, imagine Brian Johnson has to sing, Have a Drink on Me. That's one of the highest vocals I've ever heard,
I know. Well, some guys could pull it off, man. Dio is singing fucking great right to the end. Rob Halford still sounds great. So there's some people that could totally pull it off.
Yeah, I think the people that it was their natural voice, that's, so they're good to go. I think it was the other people that were maybe like, whoa, it's a fad right now in the 80s to sing as high as you can. I don't really sing that high. And then it gets pretty rough, definitely. And also you got to think about like speed metal drummers, like Lombardo, he still kills, man. He's a good friend of mine, and he was telling me it's just all about just the drums are just right here. He's not high swinging Tommy Lee type of stuff. It's just here, and so his body's still together.
Yeah, I'm good friends with Dave too. We've played many shows together, and anytime I play his kit, it blows my mind how compact it is, but also how low he sits. He's like practically sitting on the floor. So yeah, I mean, the way you set up your drums has a lot to do with it too. There's some people that have set up shit with all over the place, and they're going to have way bigger physical problems. I keep my shit pretty tight as well. So hopefully I'll be able to hang in there still.
What do you think, Alex and Geddy? You think they're going to do something?
I doubt it. I doubt it as Rush, but they've come out of their shells and they've been doing some appearances. They played with Primus together, and they did those Taylor Hawkins shows together. So I think that's cool that they're doing that. I would think that's probably the extent of what they'll do. I don't think they would ever officially do anything with another drummer, but I'm glad just to see that they're still playing together, even at that capacity.
Yeah. I'm glad Zeppelin never got a guy and went for it, because I think it kind of keeps that mystique, and that they're one of the few bands like Rush that just has this, well, no, we're done, or the Clash,
Yeah, I saw Zeppelin with Jason Bonham at the
you went to
Atlantic
that?
Records.
Oh.
Yeah, I was there for that, and that was amazing. And then I also did some shows with Page and Plant when it was just the two of them, and they had that guy Michael Lee playing drums, and it was amazing just to see it again. And I wasn't at the London show with Zeppelin. I saw them play with Jason at the Atlantic Records 40th anniversary show. I think that was around 87 or 88. But yeah, it's cool if they just did special things, you know. And if Geddy and Alex do it that way, I think that's important to preserve the legacy of Neil, or the way that Zeppelin did with Bonzo.
That dude that played in Page and Plant, Mike, that guy was unreal.
Yeah, he was perfect. He nailed it.
I couldn't believe it, actually. I saw the Page Plant, and I was like in the third row at the Shoreline, you know, that place. And I was just losing my mind. Like I just kept looking at him like, what is going on with that guy? Who is that guy? Once in a while, it's weird when a guy comes out of nowhere and you're like, who is that guy?
Yeah, no, he was killer. He passed away a few years after that. He died. Yeah.
God, it's such a bummer. Well, look, man, it was great to talk to you, and congrats on the record. Really cool. It's called Winery Dogs 3, and it'll be out February 3rd. Now, what do you got coming? You got some tour dates with the Winery Dogs?
Yeah, we start up mid-February in a few weeks from now, and we're going all year. I mean, we have dates on the book already all the way through November. So yeah, it'll be a lot of touring, man. We're starting in the US run throughout February, March, and April. Then we go down to Brazil and South America, over to Europe during the summer, and just, you know, continuing on all throughout the planet through all year long.
What type of venues in the States you guys doing? Clubs, theaters? What is it?
Yeah, like clubs and theaters. Yeah.
That's great. And who's opening? Do you guys have a cool opener or anything?
We're not carrying anybody. We just have various different bands in different markets.
Yeah. I just did a 2-month tour comedy opening for Marcus King. That's
killer.
It was I opened for Metallica 2 nights, and that was crazy hard. But opening for a band for 2 months was even harder, because you're like, I got to do it again tomorrow.
Wow. I see. I would find it hard to be a comedian and like use the same material, and like, I can't tell a joke for my fucking life. But I used to do drum clinics back in the 90s, and I found myself, like, after like 100 of them in a row, like saying the same thing. It's one thing to be playing the same thing, but when you have to put the words together and repeat yourself from night to night, I would find myself saying something. I'm like, wait, did I already say this, or was that yesterday? Like, you know, I would have trouble like actually talking night after night after night like that.
Well, you kind of you know what you're going to say, but it's just like Zeppelin, you know, you're riffing in and out of the jokes. And so it always I mean, hopefully you're doing that, you know. I don't know how you could do it without being a robot, and you riff in and out, and it keeps it fresh for you. And also knowing that these jokes, I'm about to drop a hammer on these guys and they're going to laugh their asses off. That kind of feels so, you know, it's the magic of it, man. You're in the room and bam. But when you're opening for a band, it's just like, if they don't know, they're like, why is that roadie talking about his dick? You know, just tune the guitar. And you're like, what the fuck? So it's really, really hard. A matter of fact, when I got off the tour and went back and did a set at the Comedy Store the first night, it was like the donut was off the bat, and I was just killing, because I was like, a comedy crowd, you know?
Right. Yeah. That's cool, though.
You're coming to town. If you want to ever see some comedy, let me know. I know you'll be here for I'll be in New York while you're here. I was going to go see that Twisted Sister short thing. But when are you playing in LA? I'd love to see the Winery Dogs.
We actually, the dates we're doing, February, March, and April, don't make it out west. We're actually out for almost 2 months and still only covering like half the country. So I think we're going to have another leg in May for the West Coast. So hopefully that'll be announced soon. So hopefully if you're around in May, come on out. Be our guest.
Yeah, it'd be great to meet you. I've known Richie all my life, and I had Billy on the show. Oh, by the way, if you see Billy, he did the show about 8 years ago, and he said he has like massive hard drives of bootlegs, and he goes, I'll get them hooked up for you. Too. Yeah, and I've been dying to hook up with them and get these, get these hard drives of just because I had them all on CD. You go to Japan and you go into those stores and you buy like 100 CDs. I had every Zepp show, every one, all different versions, soundboards under the fucking stage.
Dude, look at that. I mean, that's all.
Oh, yeah.
I got like thousands and thousands. I'm a huge bootlegger collector myself. So, yeah. Big time. Yeah, I used to go anytime I toured Japan, I would go with an empty suitcase to bring all the shit home. And I'd go to Airs, and back then that it was VHS tapes, like before DVDs. So I'd go to that video store Airs and just literally fill a suitcase with shit. And you sign a couple autographs and they just give you everything for free. So that's the only reason I used to want to go to Japan back then.
Same with me. I worked for the Stones, and the guy's like, "Hey, can you get me in?" So I'd buy a couple tickets and get them in. And they go, "Just take whatever you want in the store." I get a duffel bag, sent it home. I love that label, Fish Heads. That guy, Fish Heads, man, he had the best Zepp stuff, and that Totals, TOZ or whatever, Totos. Man, that shit is insane. The packaging alone would just give me goosebumps, man.
I know, totally. I mean, thank God for YouTube now. I mean, it's put most of those bootlegs places out of business, but now it's all at our fucking fingertips, man. The shit that sometimes I'll spend hours just going down these rabbit holes on YouTube with different concerts, find a fucking Pink Floyd show from 77 or whatever, just crazy stuff, and go down these rabbit holes and spend hours on YouTube. So,
well, there's these guys now too that they're taking the stuff, like the guy that has the Fresno Van Halen stuff, and they're remastering it and running it through all this amazing programs now to where the quality is just stunning.
Amazing. Yeah, totally. There was a whole bunch of really cool Kiss stuff that was released a few months ago. Some guy had like all the Holy Grail stuff like footage from, the night they recorded Alive or whatever in Detroit, and all this amazing stuff. And then it all got taken down. But I ripped a whole bunch of it before it got taken down in fear that maybe it would. And sure enough, it all got taken down. But there's some great shit out there.
I had Gene on right when that stuff was up. And I was like, where the fuck did this shit come from? Somebody obviously, I mean, they had like those rehearsals,
Yeah.
And I go, amazing. Where did you get all these? And he's like, I don't know, because I think that, Kiss eventually should just put out all of that. It's so good. It was fantastic, that stuff. Well, looking forward to meeting you. Thank you so much. If you ever want to see some comedy, let me know.
Good to meet you, man.
You too, man. Thank you so much. And got a great record here, and I'm hoping it gets some radio play. That Mad World song's got a hook that's just crushing, and it's got to get out there. So it was really cool to have you on and let the people know. Thank you so much.
Thanks, dude. Good to see you.
You too, man. See you later, buddy.